Hello, welcome back to the What's the Crack Irish Bodybuilding podcast with your host Neil Rennie. Like it's been a while. Last show we done was the review shows that went really well. So plan is to get this up and going again, kind of weekly, get some big guests on. As I say, the nature of this show was to try and promote the athletes, the coaches, and then just like Irish bodybuilding in general. So I thought no better than today's guest, John Martini. John's been in the industry for a lifetime, much longer than I have. So there'll be plenty we can glean from it. John, thank you for coming on, mate.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Like
What
really,
age are you, Neil? What age are you?
I'm 33 now.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. Older than I look.
All bodybuilders look older. All bodybuilders look old. See, when you get older, it's actually a good thing because I was 30, people thought I was 40 anyway. So getting
I'm
older as a bodybuilder is actually a good thing because you just
still holding on to
grow
my
in your age.
hair. My hair's still holding on for now. Like, anyways, we'll see how this prep goes.
Well, mine was gone in my early 20s. So.
Mate, what I want to kind of talk about really is like to give it a bit of a background to like your history in bodybuilding because it's been long, and then you had a bit of a layoff there for a while, and you're back into comeback mode.
Yeah. I've had two breaks over the years, actually. So my first break was from 2008 to 2013.
Right?
I didn't train for I came back in 2013. Didn't train for about 4 years. I dabbled, I did on a bit. I still trained, but I didn't bodybuilding. Took time off all the supplements. It was always like big events in my life. I don't know. I'm all or nothing, so I can't dabble with bodybuilding. It's either I'm all in or I don't really do it at all.
Yeah.
So I took that gap. I done the novice in 2008. I got second or third in the novice 2008.
Is that your first show, John?
Was second show. So I
Right.
done a junior show. I was one junior Mr. Northern Ireland before that.
Right.
So then I moved into the novice, got second. And then I took those four. It wasn't like I took 4 or 5 years off. I just stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And then I met Graham McConkey.
Yeah.
Colin would know him.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Harry Fergus. So he talked me into competing again. So anyone who knows Graham, it would be the older school guys would know Graham. Graham was a monster, like way ahead of his time. But he never had the confidence to compete. So Graham talked me into coming back, and I came back 2013, won the overall in NABA Northern Ireland.
Right.
So
Naba was like one of
NABA
the
back then,
ones as well, wasn't it?
yeah, it was the show to be, the show to win. There was nothing else really. There was a UK BFF, which was your road to a pro card, but back then there was one pro card a year.
Aye.
You had to win your local show, you had to win the overall, you had to go and win your Brits, the class, and then you had to win the overall in the Brits. And those years you had Flex Lewis, Sandy, and the Aisha. So that was your one pro card a year. Even like the Aisha, I think took 3 or 4 years to get it.
I mean, at that sort of level, like it's crazy. Like, I mean, obviously, I'm not taking away from a pro card now because I'm nowhere near it. But it's
Yeah,
interesting there at like one pro card, like, and the amount of good bodybuilders probably missed out on
yeah,
that
yeah.
time. Like, was NABA offering pro cards as well, or was that kind of like going towards the universe? And
NABA started doing pro cards as well. They started doing them, I'm not sure in a year, it would have been later than that, maybe 2016, 17. There was like Mark Getty got one, Al Smith got one, but it never really took off as a competition, like a pro event. It never really took off. I think they tried it for a couple of years and prize money wasn't great and it never really took off. PCA seemed to be making a better run of it now.
aye, they do. Like, I think like now it's like people looking towards that sometimes rather than even the IFBB route, especially maybe at the beginning as well. I'm here in this country because
Yeah.
it's just well, obviously there only is the one NPC show and it's down south.
What is the pro card winning now for PCA? It's like 4 or 5 grand, isn't it, for first?
Yeah, well, yeah, we get. I think there's a couple of grand, and then in the actual pro shows themselves, like there's a few now from Northern Ireland. We understand,
Yeah.
obviously, Rennie got it in that last show, and then Brian as well. So there's quite a few, and James Melville. So there's quite a few, and there's prize money to be had from it
Yeah.
as well.
You
So
do 3 or 4 shows a year, you maybe make yourself 10, 15 grand.
yeah, well, exactly. You know what I mean? Which is probably wouldn't even do at an IFBB level, given like the depth probably of the
Your
competition.
expense and your travel and all as well.
Yeah. So then you had, sorry, but off the there, but you had that, you had the break, and then you're back in, and where did it go from there, John?
So I say the won the overall at that show, Northern Ireland 2013. And then I done the universe, done the worlds, won the worlds overall. And then I sort of stopped again in 2018. So I did 4 years, 3, 4 years at it.
Mhm.
Stopped again. Same thing. I got married, had kids, stopped bodybuilding again. To be honest, the last show I done was 18. Actually, it was 2018 last show I done. I got a wee bit disheartened probably that show. I was only, what age would I have been? 18. probably about your age,
Yeah.
33, 34. You stand in a lineup, you look your best ever, like, and then you see some freak and you're like, I can never beat him.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
matter what I do, I could push this for another 3 or 4 years and I could not beat him. That guy's now an IFBB pro, but so I think I got a wee bit disheartened
Yeah.
and just because I met the new wife, had kids, I was like, I'll just leave that. And there was the Graham thing. Anyone who knows Graham, Graham died.
Mm-hmm.
We had 4 or 5 heart attacks. I literally nearly seen him die in the gym, and that will scare the shit out of you.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that took a big mental impact. It scared me. I didn't. Bodybuilding, you have to push to a degree, and I think that took that sort of I had that fear in me from that point on. It was like once you have that fear, like you're going into a workout, a leg workout, and you're thinking, if I push this, will something happen?
And I think that's understandable to have that hangover like from it.
Yeah.
Did you miss it in your time away from it, or was it very much like, no, I'm kind of done with this? Because I've seen you plenty, and you're always stayed in like I'd say good shape. You look like a bodybuilder to me. The
I looked
majority.
like I would say I was downsized. I was probably walking around in similar condition. I always walked around in good condition, but I was maybe 2 stone lighter.
Yeah.
This was very easy for me to maintain. It was like TRT dose of test and a couple of half-ass workouts a week and 3 meals a day. I could maintain that. Because you've been somewhere before, it's easier to maintain. But something clicked in me last year. Me and the wife separated. Started prepping a few people for shows. My body was fresh, no injuries. I think because all the years off has helped.
Yeah.
No injuries, no niggles. I thought, maybe I could have another go at this. So that led me to deciding, yeah, let's go for it. Let's make a comeback. So I spent a few months on my own, just trying to get back into routine, train a bit harder, playing heavier, getting more consistency back with my food. And I thought the only thing I'm really missing here is some help. And I always had Graham. Graham wasn't so much a coach. He was a training partner who would have had a look at me, advise me. So I thought, well, who will I go with? There's Brian, there's Matt McCulloch. There's so many coaches, Cuba. I seen Brian's work firsthand with my girlfriend, Amy Edwards.
Yeah, she's done brilliant this year too.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Overalls and
genetics are freakishly she doesn't realize how good she can be. But anyway, she obviously would have sent me her check-ins, just as you do. And then I would have looked at her check-ins and Brian would have virtually always said the same thing. I don't think there was an instance where he wouldn't have said we had a difference of opinion. So, and I'd seen it firsthand how on top of her he was, he was constantly replying feedback, and I thought, I'll go with Brian. Plus, he comes from a similar school to me, Dave Fox, who would have helped Brian. Graham were very close, so we have very similar thought process.
Yeah.
It's a second set of eyes too, and there's things I have been away from the sport, so there's things that he's doing now that we wouldn't have done so much back then.
I think that's good to hear as well, because obviously, like, you're open-minded to stuff. I find like it's very easy to get so like bogged down in personal bias. So like people to like go, right, you know what? It's a bit of help's good. It's going to do no harm if you're on the same wavelength and you can communicate as well with each other. Like, that's what I personally found with Brian. And it's the kind of style of coaching that I like, is to be able to have a bit of communication, a bit of back and forth. You feel like they're kind of in your corner, like they genuinely actually care for that result.
Always come to a mutual decision together, can't you? Rather than you must do this, even if you don't believe that that's going to work for you.
Like the dictatorship method, which a lot of people well do, because sometimes their own ego won't allow it. And it's obviously with somebody at your level, it's very hard to, you don't want to be dictated to. You want to have your input because you have 20 years experience on
it. Yep. No, 100%.
What are the aspirations now then, John? Because obviously 41 coming back. I thought you were competing in September. I told everybody. I was like, there's another one. I
messaged you yesterday and say snow is doing next spring.
I was so pleased that day.
You're looking great. You shouldn't count yourself out, like.
Yeah.
I think
you're on levels, though, isn't it?
I think looks better in person. I was thinking this earlier. I remember I seen you in the Elysium gym that day.
Yes.
Okay, and I was surprised. Like, this is kind of sounds bad, but you looked a shitload better than I thought you looked.
No, I appreciate that.
Some people don't photograph well, but in person you look bigger than.
I appreciate that. Like, if you said to me, like, when it sort of made sense, like, you with me, you're not an off-season bodybuilder. I was like, I'm going to take that and run with that as a compliment.
Did I say that to you? Did I?
But I think you're right. Like, with it as well, it's like, to me, like, I was looking at them levels, and it's like understanding, like, like you done as well. Like
Yeah.
you went in there with winning novice classes and stuff. It's taken me a lot longer, even with good coaching and consistency, to get to a point now. But I think it's about climbing levels. For me now, it's like going into this big class two and going right, being competitive in it. You know, that's really the goal, and bringing a level of conditioning that stands out. And then over the next few years, hopefully repeat. It's like stuff that you boys have done as well.
Mm. You're a hard worker. You can see the work you've put in. You know, if you look at like someone like
Yeah,
Vinny, like in his first few shows, you wouldn't look at Vinny and go, "That's going to be where he is now."
yeah, yeah.
Vinny's worked his ass off, and fair props to him. There is guys get there very quickly, and then there's guys just have to take a bit longer. Like I won the overall now in Northern Ireland at 28, and it took 4 years off.
Yeah.
You know, some people get there quicker, but you will get there. You can see the work you're putting in, like for sure. Work always catches.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think like having good people about you as well. And that's why I like some of these podcasts and getting to talk to people that a lot of time you wouldn't interact with, you know, if there wasn't this sort of platform there to be able to
Yeah.
sort of pick words of advice and actually listen to experience. Because a lot of time, like it's just people telling you something, but when people have went through it themselves, I think there's a lot to be gleaned from that. What is your aspiration over there? So what
Yeah,
is it?
so we get back to the question. My aspirations are I want to do the PCA next year.
Yeah.
I guess my personal aspirations are to be better, at least as good as I was, if not better. I really don't want to be that person on stage standing there and going, he looks good, but he used to look better.
Or his age kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. I don't even want to have the excuse of age. You know, so I want to get on stage at least as good, if not better.
Mm-hmm.
If I can do that, then that's the main goal, is just to do that. It's not to win an overall. I'd love to win an overall, win a pro card, whatever. But if I can do that, then I know I will be happy and content. And
Yeah.
then wherever that physique lands, we'll see.
There was obviously that show in Ireland in May, is usually a PCA Pro qualifier as well.
Yeah. Is
So
this one not?
this one doesn't tend, I don't think it, no, I don't think so. I think the one obviously in Galway,
Yes.
the Irish Open is a pro qualifier.
That's the
So
one Brian won his pro card at.
one Brian won that. So like that, I think there's a few. So that one in May will be. So obviously that offers the opportunity there for you as well. As
Yeah.
a class two, John, or are you going to do masters? I think class two, really.
I think class two. I hadn't even mentioned it, Brian. Brian, I don't even know. Maybe Brian doesn't think I'm over 40. We haven't talked about me. Maybe he thinks I'm younger. Yeah, that's probably wishful thinking. But we haven't mentioned over 40, so I think class two.
Like, and again, I'm not completely sure, but I'm not sure if you win a pro card as a masters in PCA. Do you compete
No
as a
idea, to be
pro
honest.
masters? So to me, like, I'm obviously seeing obviously that your level and like the legs at you as well. Like, you know, there's obviously an opportunity there, and then to go and compete and like at a high level and then PCA pro shows, because that's one of the federations that are really pushing their pro leagues now as well.
Yeah.
Like I've seen NABA reintroduce one as well, but I think that'll take a little bit of time to get up and running.
Sad to see NABA. I hope NABA get back on their feet. It's just, it's it's social media that they just kill themselves with social media. They just done nothing for so
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
They're just now playing catch up.
Yeah. What have you found? Like, so that's, you know, coming back from it, John, after maybe what, 5 or 6 years out, like, have you seen like your body change in a way you'd expect? Is there anything you're working around, like injury wise? Did your training change much either with Brian?
Training's changed with Brian. I used to do your standard sort of Dorian Yates 4 days a week, and maybe done an extra wee bit of volume one day on a weak body part, but it was your pretty plus your bodybuilding, your bro split, chest, triceps, back, shoulders, biceps, legs.
Yeah.
4 days a week. Brian has me more like, so we're still doing legs, but we're like literally just completely going through the motions on it. It bores me. Legs used to be my favorite workout. That's my least favorite because it's just boring.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we're doing like, it's more like a push, you know. We do chest, shoulders, triceps. We do pull, back, biceps. We do a top line day, which is chest,
Right.
biceps, a bit of shoulders.
The old school boys completely turning the grave.
So
Day.
the volume is a bit lower per body part than I would have been used to.
Yes.
It's more frequency.
So you'd have trained higher volume, because when I went on to Brian, not to talk about myself, but when I went on to Brian, I was like, fuck, this is much more volume than what I had been doing previously.
See, over the workout, because you're doing, you know, I'm doing chest, shoulders, triceps.
Yeah.
Maybe there, you get your volume that way, but per like I would have done 5 exercises for chest, 3 to 4 for triceps. You know, so there was a lot more volume per body part.
Yeah.
And what I'm like this, it is quite low. It is, I see what you're saying. It is still quite high volume, but there's less volume than I'm used to and more frequency.
Yeah. And how have you got on with that? Like, have you been able to buy into it and responded quite well in terms of?
Yeah, I'm actually really enjoying it, and I was never a logbook trainer, so I'm doing a bit more of that too.
Yeah.
I was never naturally strong. I don't know why, I just never was. So I never got into this strength thing, maybe because I wasn't good at it. I never focused on it. And it never seemed to bother me because I've seen people, like I would have got on a chest press machine, shoulder press machine, someone on it smaller than me, and I had to take weight off it. But because I was bigger than them, I guess it didn't bother.
Doesn't hit the ego quite as hard then.
So, but now I'm concentrating more on strength, which I guess is unusual now for my age. You expect someone at my age maybe be doing the other thing, but I think because I trained like that for so long and took so much time off that I don't have any niggles, injuries,
Yeah.
zero. Like there's no knee pain, there's no elbow pain, no shoulder pain. I've never torn anything. So my body's fresh. So hopefully, well, it's so far it's let me train hard, and hopefully on stage the body will look fresh.
I mean, like, if you're having no knee issues and all of them legs, that's a pretty good thing. What does it like? Actually, what does a leg session look like now? Tell me what was a leg session back in John Martini fucking piling that mass on there compared to the leg session now?
Well, my most brutal leg sessions would have been with Graham. You seen me and
Yeah, that my first experience was down in Peak Body Gym. I think it was you, Graham, Colin. I think it was
yeah,
you on the hack squat getting
yeah.
absolutely nailed and shout after. I was like,
So it wasn't so much as you see.
it.
It wasn't so much like, okay, let's 3, 4, 5, 6 plates. Let's go to failure, 10 reps. It was just like, so Graham would have took a leg extension and he would have had you going up and down the rack to failure.
Right,
and that's okay, that's your leg. But then you would have been straight into the hack squat. And you would have been 2 failure on the hack squat with pauses, static holds. And then you would have finished on like a leg press. And these are all done back to back. So it's almost, if you've seen like Milos Sarcev's way of training,
yes, like nearly giant set style work.
Yeah, nearly giant sets, but with heavy weight, and it just messed you up. That was Graham's way of training. No word of a lie. Me and Graham went over to train with Dorian Yates for a back session in the old Temple gym. Paid for the session. Graham was with Dorian, like he was obsessed with Dorian. So we done back with Dorian. And then Graham started speaking to him after the session and says that this is what we do. There was a guy, a lot of guys probably don't know, there's a guy, Trevor Francis, back in the day. He would have been into this big way of training. And Dorian says to Graham, you're training too hard. That's too much. Your body cannot recover from it. Mm. Dorian's workout, it was Dorian's workout. It was what he'd done. But this sounds terrible. But for me, I had harder workouts with Graham every single week.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it.
If you ask Colin, like people will say, like, it can't be true, it's rubbish. If you ask Colin, you ask anyone who's trained with Graham, they'll tell you that is fact. Like, he went through training partners, like 3, 4, 5 weeks a training partner would last, and that would be that. You can do that for one workout, but to do that every single day,
yeah,
week after week after week after week, it takes a certain amount. I couldn't do it now. I needed him to do that.
Did it work? Like, obviously, the size of your legs, the muscle you got. Do you think it worked? Like, it worked, obviously, or could it have worked? It's working despite.
Do you think we went too far? I do. I honestly think we would have got better results with a bit less. Looking back, I think my best was just after Graham passed because it sounds terrible, but I was forced to cut back off the intensity a little bit. So you can go too far now. Saying that, there's definitely something to be gained from learning where too far is.
I'd agree fully with that.
At least then you can pull back and find your spot. If you never go to the point where you went too far, then how are you going to realize where is too far and how are you going to maximize your progress?
No, I'd agree fully with that. I remember, because Colin, I started with him, and I started with very first bodybuilding. Colin was obviously coming from Graham's school, and I remember putting us through a leg session, and it just being one of the most traumatic.
Yeah, we've done that every week, every single week,
and there was no injuries from that either. You were all
no injuries. I have rock solid knees. I was fortunate. I never wear knee wraps or sleeves or straps, or I've never wear anything like that. So I was very fortunate. Definitely, there's a genetic component there of not being able to hurt. It's harder to hurt myself.
Durable.
Those are definitely, but Graham would have rang me we'd done legs on a Sunday. he would have rang me on the Wednesday and he would have had his leg workout planned. Like that man lived for like that day.
Yeah.
You know,
That,
that was
that, that ignites something in you though too, in terms of
no,
like
it's
bodybuilding. Like even if you think, right, I could have done things slightly, I don't know, smarter, if that's what you want to say, but it gives you something there. There's a passion, and that's like that obviously stays with you, hence why you're doing it so long. So I
yeah,
think having somebody like that and learning that way, it's only a good thing. Where now, once they're coming into it and it almost feels like they're trying to make it as easy as possible. And it's like, trying to sometimes out science, not saying science, like we're all science lifting, do you know what I mean, at the end of the day, but trying to out science the work and the passion for it, I find a little bit, especially
yeah.
because a lot of my client base now, I feel like an old man now because I'm only 33. I feel young still, but I'm talking to the ones that are like 19, 20. I'm taking a lot of juniors coming through. And even their era, it feels different than my era. My era feels different than, say, your era as you go through
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
always nostalgic. It's always the best, our own era.
A lot of things are rehashed, of course, too. Or there's terms put in things people have been doing for years, like reps of reserve or deloads. Like me and Graham would have sat down one Sunday after 5, 6 weeks of really busting ourselves and say to each other, "How are you feeling? Feeling a bit wrecked. Okay, we'll take it a wee bit easier next week." We
Yeah.
didn't call it a deload or
Yeah.
come in what that say and say like we're both shattered. I didn't sleep well. My appetite's gone. We'll go a bit easy today.
Yeah.
Reps in reserve. It's like it's everything has a tag. Even like the injectable L-carnitine people are using.
I'd never
Like
even heard of that before, honestly. That's only been a thing.
honestly, we were doing that in 2014. I first done that. John
Right.
Metz was the component. He was the guy that brought that in with insulin. He believed you needed an insulin spike with it. So people were using it 2014, 2015. I would have done that with, but these things that they go through cycles and then it disappeared,
Yeah.
as you say, to probably about a year ago, year
Year or
and a half.
so ago, I've seen like engineering muscle and stuff coming out with it. I think,
Yeah.
I mean, I always feel it depends who's the big influencer at the time and what they follow. Like obviously you had Dorian Yates back then, and then sort of JP came about and it's similar sort of method, and everybody was wearing Crocs, shouting at the barbell, and then it sort of dies off a little bit to something
Yeah.
else.
There seems to be a resurgence at the minute of hard training, though, which is good to see.
Yeah.
You do have your guys, you say JP, Cuba, Hollingshead. There seems to be a lot more of a resurgence again in hard training.
There's a backlash, I think, against the like RP reps and reserve thing that all went on beforehand. It's nearly like a backlash, like back to the old school, which I like. I think, as you say, John, that was one of the things we're going to talk about was actually the old school versus
Yeah.
new. I think yourself about interesting because you're kind of coming from slightly into both eras as well. So like the differences, obviously, we talked a little bit about the training, but we touch more on that. But like nutrition, like PEDs is always something people want to hear about. Do you know what I mean? Because it's interesting, it's part of the sport too.
One of the biggest things I see is that the biggest thing, the benefit of the new school and PEDs is bloods.
Yeah.
Nobody back in my day got their bloods done.
Mhm.
It wasn't a thing. There was no labs to go and get your bloods done. You go to your GP, of course, but they didn't want to know. Just tell you to stop doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it was maybe like Dave Crossan was probably sort of the first, wasn't he, to sort of get that going? And there's so many now popped up, even like Randoc's private company. So that's definitely a good thing. There's 100%. It's a huge positive. Now, back in the day, the only thing is I would say guys did take breaks.
Yeah.
We would done like my first cycle was 6 weeks. Like who does a 6 week cycle nowadays?
Thing no more unless you're taking Anadrol.
Yeah. 12 weeks at a push was your maximum cycle, and then you did came off, you know, off. There was no such thing as TRT or sports TRT as they call it now. The problem is, of course, with guys who do a lot of cycles, even back then, if you've done 12-week cycles and done a couple of them every year, eventually maybe do get to the point where you're shut down anyway.
Yeah.
I know I did.
Mhm.
So I am TRT now for probably life. But in terms of the biggest thing with the drugs nowadays, the biggest advancement I've seen is the bloods.
Yeah.
People are getting bloods done.
I'd agree. So obviously, like all you can go anywhere and get it, and it's still fairly. I think if you're not doing bloods now and you're using PEDs, it's like, I mean, to me, it's stupid. Do you know what I mean? It's very, it's
The
per
only thing I would say you need to be careful with is I see a tendency of guys doing is they get their bloods done when they know they're going to be better.
at their best. Yeah, yeah. But even
Nobody
like,
does it right in the middle of a cycle for a show.
I think that's important though too, because even as a coach, like if you can read in the blood work and actually see where people's levels are at during the show prep and stuff, then you can kind of like actually tailor the PED usage to the actual do you know what I mean? Especially when it comes to estrogen management within that. So as you say, every week it's 6 to 8 weeks and go, happy days, we're good. But then they're back on for 20 weeks.
HDL's great, the LDL's great. Yeah, the blood's not too thick. I'm happy days and go. But if you've done a 30-week cycle where it was horrible, God knows what plaque deposits you have going on, or so it's not telling the full story. So you can't hide away from it too.
It's easy, as you say, for the bloods to miss things too, because yes, it's your blood work. But I mean, I had Dr. Dean on this, and some of the level and in-depth knowledge he went in on that, like it was you're going, shit, I'm missing a lot more than even I thought I was missing. You don't know until you know.
The safest cycle is no cycle at the end of the day, but
that's it.
Way doing things safe.
And if you don't mind, John, like, how's it look for you now? Obviously, like, because again, if I put you up and was like, what's his PED cycle? What's his biggest cycle? Like, you don't need to go into maybe like full detail on that, but like, where was that at comparatively to say now? Obviously, as you're into your 40s and stuff, not that we're talking too much about age, although I mention it all the time, apparently.
I cycled through the years of all sorts. I've tried everything. The only thing I haven't tried is DNP. Right, everything else. To me, it just never served the purpose. Like, I could diet and getting lean, why would it bother? My first cycle was tests. The first cycle was DACA and D-ball. I've done reasonably high doses. I've never been crazy. I would say my most would have been like a show prep. You're probably talking maybe 1.5 grams, somewhere around that range combined. Nothing mad.
It's not a huge amount then. Not at all.
I've done your 700 milligram of Tren a week.
Right. How'd you feel?
A day. Shit. I didn't get it as bad as a lot of people. No, I could actually sleep.
Yeah.
I didn't get night sweats, but I felt very robotic.
Mm-hmm. Emotionless, nearly, like, kind of.
Yeah, like completely. If someone told me my mother died, I'd be like, meh.
Nah.
So maybe not that bad, but and then you're with a partner or whatever, and they're asking what's wrong with you. And as far as you're concerned, there's nothing wrong with you. If you have no feelings, then you have no emotions, and there isn't anything wrong with you. But there clearly is.
Yeah.
So I've done that. Now, I wouldn't recommend that. Now, what has changed now is if I'm going to use Tren, which I would use, but I'll use it for prep, I would like to only do maybe 200 to 300 milligrams. I think there's definitely a certain point where you don't get any.
It's limiting. Again, I haven't had your experience in terms of like doing it as long, but I found I remember second time around there, was it last year? Yeah, I went 300 Tren and it just felt too much. Like, for my sleep, again, that's what you're trying to go, right? Yes, the drug we know is going to work, it's going to have a positive benefit, but it's going to have another probably negative. My sleep had completely went. I remember waking up and being like, have I pissed myself? Like, I think to that, like, the sweat was like yellow, green, and blue, and it's like, no. But I went to 150. I didn't feel that I lost anything, but obviously I could sleep better as well. So I think there's a certain, like, more isn't always better either.
No, it's 100%. People, you'll probably hear all the old school guys say, like, the old parabolin was 76 milligrams. It would have took 2 mil a week, 3 mil a week tops,
Yeah.
So when people started making Tren at 200 milligram a mil, they started getting issues.
Yeah. And then, like, obviously, as well, because they were in the amps, weren't they? They actually.
Yeah, the amps, yeah.
So now it's like you don't really know what you're getting either a lot of the time. Especially at the minute, it's obviously more challenging as well because of some of the
Master and Primo and stuff.
Impossible. That'd be worth about 50 quid a go now.
So in terms of cycles, how they changed over years, back then a lot of people would have been heavy tests. So you use 750, 1,000 milligram of test, and then you use an anabolic. Your anabolic in the off season probably would have been a DACA or EQ. You would have done 400, 500, 600 milligrams, and that would have brought you in 1.5. Now, I don't know other guys back then. I know one guy used 2 shots of Test D a day, 500 milligrams of Test D a day, and 100 milligram of oxys. So there was people using big doses too, and then now it's sort of changed to drier compounds. People will use mass, in the off season. So say my 1,500 milligram total a week now would consist of, say, 800 mass, 700 tests.
Yeah.
Or 800 mass, 500 tests, 200 MPP. Yeah. Something like that, whereas back in the day, it would have been the other way. It would have been more tests and less anabolic, but like a DACA or EQ.
And I think it's interesting too, that you mentioned things like EQ and stuff, because again, it's like, even whether you say training, like even PEDs come in out of fashion as well, or protocol. Yeah, I've started seeing everyone's like, no one touched EQ. Now I'm starting to see a lot more coaches using EQ as well again.
Yeah, because there's all saying now you can lower estrogen too, aren't they?
Yeah. So like this stuff comes in and out of fashion as well. Like, higher test, lower test. There was a big thing about like safer progression model, which is great in theory until it's obviously you put more in and you get bigger as well. So
Yeah.
it does come in like even but see we'll go back in the day, we'll call it. What about like estrogen management? Like you were using tamoxifen, AIs, was anything like that in play?
My first few shows, you had tamoxifen. That was really about it. There was nothing else other than that. Nothing else to use. Then later on, it probably went from one extreme to the next. So I would say around 13, 14, 15, 16, those years, people then got big into letrozole or Arimidex.
Yeah.
Everyone was almost crushing their estrogen,
Yeah.
which was probably, we went from one extreme to the next. We had loads of estrogen till you had no estrogen. So people would use a milligram of Arimidex a day coming into the show. And then, yeah, I know guys would have done like a milligram of Arimidex, 2.5 milligrams of letrozole, and 20 milligrams of tamoxifen all at once coming into the show. It's like
the estrogen was already dead.
yeah.
It didn't need to let it go like
But as you say, if people were getting bloods that maybe see,
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I don't know this, and then you wonder why you felt like death. So also probably that's why those years you had a big step up in condition too. You had guys with glutes were coming in harder, grainier. You need estrogen. Yeah, it's everything in balance, isn't it? So you need some estrogen. If you're going to do a show, you're probably better not crushing your estrogen, but having it on the lower side if you're going to achieve a certain look.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too from experience that you have to almost like the game's a little bit about experimentation. You can have all the research and literature you want, but unless you've been through it, because again, some people might feel a little bit better with more estrogen, some people like look better with less. And I think it's like until you do, like that's why I like competing every sort of 18 months, anyways, because you don't you're trying to progress as a bodybuilder. Trying to I'm doing multiple shows to try and experiment with these sort of things because then that's ultimately how you refine your process to some degree and become a better bodybuilder by going through that because you don't really know like if like growth hormone as well. So the last thing I sort of want to touch on in terms of the PEDs was that something that was being utilized like heavily back.
When I started, no, and then within a few years it came on the scene. Yeah, people were using it. There's all sorts of Chinese generic copies. It seems better now. Actually, the growth hormone. I think there was a lot of dodgy stuff back then. There's a few people with a lot of money were getting pharma stuff, which back then was probably legit. Now God knows. Probably shouldn't say this, but for a couple of years, I was very lucky. I knew someone. I shouldn't even started this.
I don't mention the name here. I can't. So you're fucking.
I knew someone whose child was prescribed it.
Right.
He would have filled his prescription more frequently, and then I would have bought some of the pharma stuff off him with this prescription sticker still on.
Much a difference with the pharmaceutical side of stuff than
it did. Now that was back then. You did notice a difference. I used a lot less, probably half.
Yeah.
I don't know. You definitely noticed a difference on it.
Yeah, I mean it's something that I think most people are using now to the degree at a sort of higher level with it. I think it's not necessary, but it's certainly very very helpful. It
does give a certain look, I think, to a physique. It's a more three-dimensional sort of rounder. You can get lean. I also think it helps in the off season where you're able to push more food.
This year is the first year that I used it pretty much solidly throughout the off season and into a prep. And I noticed a difference. I stayed a lot leaner, this off season. I thought my appetite was better. I thought everything just kind of functioned a little bit better, in terms of. And then I was away there for a month or so, hadn't used it. And again, I noticed the difference until I put it back in terms of just the visual look of the physique itself.
Rounder, don't you?
Yeah, just poppier, just rounder, like straight, almost within a day or two. There's a difference there.
I would say to people who are watching who have very little experience with gear, like, do not think that spending a couple of £100 a month on growth hormone, you'd be better using a bit of test and a bit of
yes. That's exactly, John. Like that's something you're going to use. That is none of this is doctor's advice. On
no, if you have some muscle,
yes,
will maybe fill you out, round that out. But there's nothing to round out.
Yeah.
I remember a guy asking Graham came into the gym once, and this guy really annoyed Graham because he didn't put any effort into training, didn't eat right, but he was always asking him about drugs. And he said to Graham, "Have you heard of Trideca?" Trideca was like the 3 blended Deca thing. And Graham said, "Why don't we try training first?"
That's probably the best bit of advice. That's one of the questions. Probably one of the best bits of advice he's been given.
But no, so there is no miracle. These things you need, like especially things like growth hormone, unless you have muscle, it's not going to do anything for you. I know the whole sort of theory behind the back was and anyways like hyperplasia, it makes new muscle cells, but if you don't have any muscle there to begin with, you're wasting your money.
Yeah, the expense doesn't weigh it up, until you get a little bit further into it. And like fundamentally, as you say, it's like the training and the nutrition comes.
Yeah.
It always comes first, though. That's the thing. It always, no matter what level you're at, that has to be like your main focus. And
You also need a bit of genetics. That's like I hate to see someone who's fully acne, losing their hair, training hard, paying coaches, taking a lot of gear, and barely looks. It sounds terrible, and nobody should like give up on their dreams. But see, in reality, see if you've been doing this 5, 6, 7 years, all out, training's good, diet's good, everything's on point, and you don't look impressive or relatively impressive, it's probably not ever going to happen. Which is fine. Carry on bodybuilding, enjoy it, but don't kill yourself.
And this is what I'd said about, a lot of times is being realistic and be able to be introspective enough to reflect on where you are. Because to me, when I was first starting, it was like seeing boys just going, boom, right, flying on, and it maybe doing very similar or maybe less than I was. And that's not to say my genetics are shit. You know what I mean? Like they're dead on for where I'm at.
Yeah. There is shit genetics. Like I have seen shit genetics.
Yeah, yes, I've coached them.
People do not respond the next to anything. I've seen it firsthand. People put work in and you put them on a cycle and they just look like a slightly bigger version of the shit self. It's.
Yeah. I get it. And it's like knowing where you're at. And then once you kind of know where this is where I want to go to, this is the level that I can possibly achieve, you can kind of then go, right, well, how much am I willing to essentially trade off when it comes to that side of things, like in terms of anabolics or even time and relationships? Because yourself, we both talked about it, like, it takes a toll on that side of things as well, or it can do.
100%. It is not worth your health or your mental health. You just need someone who's going to be honest with you. Like we have been coaching long enough where you see guys come into the gym and you kind of know within a year about muscle bellies, even if they're not big, the way the body flows, if they have genetics or not.
I had a guy, young lad, 2 twins this year.
Yeah, they're both very good. Yeah.
Like out of nowhere, like started off, they'd done a little bit of training, but their granda was like, you had a picture up on the wall he showed me of his granda competing beside Arnie at NABA. And then his dad went in the NABA, you probably know him if I can remember his name, a NABA title there. And like they responded, like I was like, fuck me. Like I need to stop. Essentially, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. They're going to be better than me very soon.
If he was on stage to beat me, like he's fucking started here. Do you know?
Yeah, no, you have it or you don't, like. But I just find it sad when you see someone chasing something that's never going to materialize, health wise. And
yeah, agreed, John. Like general landscape of bodybuilding now, anyways, like how do you sort of view it? What do you, in terms of like levels, standards, how do you see even like some of like the judging and what people are looking for has changed? Social media, even like that's obviously quite a large part of not just like bodybuilding, but also coaching. For me, it's a large part of my business as well. Like, how do you see the landscape of bodybuilding now?
Financially, the sport's never been better. There's so many opportunities for coaches like me, you. Back in my day, there was no such thing. You'd get a guy in the gym who would help you, and there was no money attached.
Yep.
Maybe he was selling you a few bottles of gear, but there was nothing else attached. There's loads of shows, like all the pro prize money's through the roof. That's great. Social media, there's so many opportunities for people to make money doing what they enjoy doing. Bodybuilding, the bodybuilding competitions themselves, there's still outstanding physiques. No, there really is. Like I know a lot of the old school guys, not the new school guys, but some of the guys now, like they would more than hold their own with. The only thing I would say is that the local shows, especially like bodybuilding classes, Northern Ireland can be a bit of an exception, but a lot of the time there's not a lot. Like you go to some of the shows and you get a class and there's one person in it, 2 people in it. The bodybuilding classes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Their height classes. Classic is full. Physique is full.
That's massive. Probably down to social media. Chris Bumstead, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And honestly, I can sit there and look at a physique class and look at a classic class and then go and look at class 1, 2, and 3 and look at the classic guys and go, they would win 1, 2, and 3 as well if they were actually standing it. They actually have better physiques a lot of the time than the guys doing the men's bodybuilding.
I agree. I think Northern Ireland, like Ireland in general. I think there's a lot of good bodybuilders there. I think the
There
problem
is.
across the water, like obviously, my interest is more within the PCA in terms of where I coach, where I go to clients with. But like I feel that the physiques are there. It's just
Yeah,
there's a show every other weekend. Like you talk about it in terms of that one pro card a year. So the best of the best are going to come and compete and stand on that stage, and it's like fucking jaw dropping then.
yeah,
But there's a dilution, I suppose, within them regional shows and even a lack of competition because nobody wants to stand on stage by yourself or with one other person. Reality,
yeah,
like I'd rather come if I thought you were competing, I'd rather all the guys that I fucking look up to, like sort of, and compete with them and not get a place in as to stand there with a trophy and by myself. But to me, it's slightly diluted because of that. More opportunities, but less competition. But still, I feel at the top level of it, those physiques are still phenomenal.
the physiques at top level are still as good today as they would have been back then. There's no doubt about it. Just the numbers in the bodybuilding classes, I remember I done class two for the first time, 2013. There was 9 of us. You just
Yeah,
local level, you just not get that in class two anymore. Like
no,
you'll maybe get 2 or 3 when you're doing it. Like
yeah.
you'll not get 9.
And then the class two is probably one of the busier classes too. That's the thing.
Yeah,
You want
yeah,
to make it one tall bodybuilder. Like my big thing was trying to get the PCA as well, because like you talked about, like with NABA, it's like because they haven't stayed up to date with social media and pushed it as much as it's more old school and people, a lot of people don't like it. It's part of it now, and it's that you have to just accept that that is part of it. My big thing with the PCA was to try and like really start, especially in Ireland, was promote it a bit like they were doing the English shows to try and again, why even this podcast, like trying to get people on that are maybe competing to draw them a bit of like support up for it. I think by doing that and offering maybe even some sort of incentive for people to compete for them shows, like your pro qualifier there now, like that's
yeah. No, everyone wants that pro card. That's definitely an incentive for people.
yeah. And I think the standard is good. Like the conditioning seems to be a thing there that's quite heavily rewarded now as well.
Especially with PCA, I've noticed now condition with PCA, which I like. I do like condition. I always pride myself being on good condition. So I do like that PCA do favor condition. To me, it's just lazy getting on stage, not
Yeah,
in condition.
I agree.
Okay, be slightly off. Everyone makes mistakes, but if you're fat, you're
If there's still body fat there, it's like that's
yeah.
it's not a peaking issue. Then it's very much a conditioning issue at that point there as well. I want to ask a couple more because I'm very wary of
No, you
45.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
It's more people's attention span. But what is like this is questions people have sent in. What's been the hardest sort of prep you've like, can you remember a prep that was like that's particularly hard or moments you're like fuck?
So there was 2 preps in particular. The first one was the first prep was my first prep was one that was hard because it was completely new to me and I didn't really have a clue what I was doing.
Yeah.
So I remember breaking down one night, like 5 or 6 weeks in, and just raiding the fridge, just emptied the fridge. I didn't go to the toilet, I think, for about 4 or 5 weeks at one point, you know, because I didn't know what I was doing. My dad just wasn't right. So there was that prep because it was new, all new to me. So it was a learning curve. Still got in shape. Just, I don't know how, just by pure stubbornness.
Stubbornness usually that's
And then there was a novice show that I done as well, which I remember was a real grind. Um, I overdid it. They're 100%. I overdid it. And about 3 or 4 weeks, I was ready. But I just pushed and pushed and pushed. And I remember just like even walking, like it was an effort. Like walk 20 feet was like a toll. I remember sitting outside the show on the ground at the door waiting for the venue to open. And I was just dead. I was shredded like, but I definitely give up some tissue. So those are the 2 shows. And that show taught me that it's not always about pushing to 100% as hard as you can. Because sometimes it gives you a worser look.
yeah.
There was actually, to tell you a story, there was a guy who used to help me back then called Danny Brown.
Danny, yeah.
So there was 2 guys. I was competing in this gym I would have went to every so often, and then there was another guy competing in that gym. And I was about 4 weeks out. I was ready pretty much. Like looked great, full round, hard everywhere. A little bit on my back, which probably could have taken care of itself in the next 4 weeks without doing anything too extreme. But anyway, push, 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 died, and then got on stage. And this guy ended up beating me. And then Danny said to him in the gym a couple of days later, like, you wouldn't have beat John 4 weeks ago. Like, you just wouldn't. And this guy was like, you're full of shit. Everyone says that. And then he seen me about 3 or 4 weeks later when I had actually got back in some sort of fullness and regained what I lost. And then he went to Danny and he said, "No, you're right, I wouldn't have." But I had actually destroyed myself. It is possible. I learned from that show it is possible to like push too hard and ruin your physique at the same time.
I think they're valuable experiences though, a bit like that training time with maybe, it's
Yeah.
like I'm glad I had a couple of rough rides. Do you know what I mean? Because it kind of teaches you first of all, like you can do it, you can push, or and every prep seems that little bit easier as well thereafter. But you learn. Like, would you say as you prep longer, and the more you've done this, like the preps have get easier, or you've just get better at like dealing with them?
I do think the more you prep, the more almost like muscle memory, your body actually remembers what it needs to do and
Yeah.
it'll hold that leaner condition because it's not new to it.
Mhm.
And then, of course, you learn what to expect. Like the last prep I done most all my preps are pretty much done on my own. Like I decided my dad, I had someone to look at me and it was like, "You're fat, you're not, you're okay." Like a second set of eyes. This prep, I got to the point where literally I was making my own decisions on the fly. So I could be halfway into that day. I would train, I would look at myself and go, "I'm really flat, I need to eat."
Mhm.
And I wouldn't have waited till the next day or the weekend. I would have had it there and then. And I was actually my best package I ever brought because I'd learned my body so
Right.
well that I was able to do that on the fly and also was able to do it subjectively while looking at myself.
That's a skill. That's a
That
skill.
is a skill because you need to almost step out of your own body and look at yourself subjectively.
That's something I would struggle with for sure. Like there's like a level of emotion that I carry in it. Do you know what I mean? I think it would probably blind some of my decision making processes. It's different when you're coaching somebody because you're
Yeah,
not
you're,
them.
you're not attached to the process.
And you obviously had done it for a long time to be able to be intuitive enough to make it. I think especially like those people starting, if they're making intuitive decisions, they're usually coming from a place based probably fully on emotion as much a
Well,
lot of
that's
the
it. You need to know that actually my body needs this and not I want it.
time.
It's
Yeah.
the difference. And then there would have been days it would have been the opposite. I would have, no, I can push today.
Yeah.
I feel good. Let's really suffer today. But it was that prep where I got to the point where, yeah, I have this sus now. Personally, on my own physique, I know now what to do with it.
Yeah.
Um, so then I guess people would ask, why did you go to Brian? But you always learn more. But like this last week's check-in, like I say to Brian, "No, you have a good eye," because he said something that resonated with exactly what I felt that day.
Yeah. I think that gives you confidence then,
Yes.
even in your own thought making. If they're agreeing in what you're thinking, then it's
Yeah.
like we're in, it's rolling now. We're chugging along here.
Yeah.
The like what's weight sitting at now, John? Like what is a contest weight for you normally?
I don't know what I'm going to end up this time. My contest weights were all different over the years, depending on what look I brought and condition. I started with Brian. I started at 100 kilo, 99.9 or something. About 109 now, so I'm up what
Right.
9 kilo in 8 weeks or something.
Fucking right.
That's
Very
muscle
good.
memory, like just gaining
Yeah.
what I had lost. I think my best look probably was around 210, 210, 217, 220, 222, something around high 15, 16.
Right,
Was
that's
probably
it. That's a big guy. What height are you, baby? 9'5".
5'8.5", 5'9", 5'9", something like that.
So
Yeah,
something similar this year, obviously. Then that'll be some showing, John, to come back
yeah.
at 9 kilos on in 8 weeks is a very good start. Like,
Yeah, it's also muscle memory. Obviously, a lot of that is like and then you're eating more and you're holding more glycogen and stuff. So we don't have a set goal. He's still happy with body composition and stuff. So if we can get 115, 17, something like that before start dieting down. I actually prefer dieting. I get in shape pretty easy.
yeah,
It takes me a lot of food, so 5,300 I'm at now, calorie wise. So
I
it
assume that will be climbed from there.
can become like a bit of a chore, as you know, after a while. It's still fine at the minute, which I think is a good sign, but it can become your whole life has to.
Yeah, I hate it this off season because obviously coming in a little bit bigger every year has been a little bit more muscle and that. Like that, like I was 6,000 calories at a point for about 4 months this year, and it just like mentally it started ruining me. It's like the enjoyment for bodybuilding at that point. That was before I signed up with Wardy actually was just getting to me. Even stomach digestion. It's like there's only so much going in. Do you know what I mean as well? Because like, even at that weight, I'm only sitting at 105 kilos with 6,000 calories going in. I found that really, really challenging. And also like the diet and better because again, you're not like, yeah, there's things to do, but you're not focused solely on food.
What was your heaviest weight ever? What was your sort of?
Was it 105 kilos was the heaviest I'd been.
See,
So
I've done so many different off seasons. My heaviest weight, which was fat, was 19 and a half stone. I don't even know what that is in kilos, but and I dieted down and I ended up the same weight with a slightly worse look than I did when I stayed 1710.
yeah,
You
there's a
know,
sweet spot. Like there is like I didn't push up. I was probably as heavy this year as I was the previous year, but like I physically couldn't have got fatter. Like I couldn't have ate the food, more food, and move less. And it
yeah.
was actually when I sent it to Wardy, he's like, I need to scale this back just because performance is starting to dip, and
I think it works once. It works maybe your first couple of years, like where those big bulks, push ups, like that's what I done the first few years. Like my weight just shot up. I started training at is it 18, 19? I remember we had an induction in the gym, it was 9 stone 10s. What's that, 135 pounds or something?
right.
And then 3 years later, my off season weight was 17 stone. And I stood on stage as a junior at like just under 1310, I think I was. So I literally gained about, what's that, near 4 stone of
Yeah, in that
three.
time frame.
But that only worked once.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing like ice cream and whey protein shakes and blending it up and drinking it. It worked, but I don't think it continues to work if you keep doing it.
No, I think the gut just starts to give out.
Yeah.
Like I would add it. This would be my fifth year properly, really doing it. Like my first show was at Men's Physique at like 100 and I think it was 157 pound, and
Yeah.
then that last year there was it. I was on stage at 202 between 202 and 205. So in that time frame, obviously, I had the opportunity to do them big push ups, and it came on very quickly. But then I just always thought, here, this will just keep going like this. But I think there's a point there where it's like, right, your body's kind of going, there hasn't got that same level of gas in it anymore.
No, you only get away with for so long. I think a lot of bodybuilders end up with gut problems even after they stop bodybuilding. Your body's just not built to do that for 20 years, to eat 6,000 calories. Like,
No. John, I'm going to wrap this up soon, but I feel like I could talk to you all day about this sort of stuff and go back and forward, just generally the topics of bodybuilding. But I like asking this question as well. So I think I give you a little bit of pre-warning for this because sometimes it puts people on the spot. What's
I've actually forgot what the question is, so it sounds like I must have come up with an answer already.
should have written it down. Best advice that you personally ever been given?
Oh, yes, yes, we did. That's right. Come back to me. Consistency, I'd say, is the best bit of advice. Just 100%. You need to be consistent with everything. Do your training, eat your meals, sleep, do your training. It sounds so simple, but you see so many people like neglect it. If you can be 80, 90% all of the time,
Yeah.
there's some people trying to find that little like secret or secret workout or secret combination of carbs or macros, or just eat your food and train hard and do that every single day.
Yeah.
See, that will get you probably 80% of what you're ever going to get, just doing that.
Yeah.
That's the biggest secret, I think. It doesn't sound like a secret, but
It is because we always try and overcomplicate things. Like we're always looking for that 1% when
yeah,
fucking 50% of it. So I think that's fair. And it's just time doing it, isn't it? It's just time doing
it
it.
is. It's time and consistency.
John, I know you're a coach as well. But we'll get you on again though, because I think that was good, like as well. So, but
Thank
you're
you.
coaching. If people want to like contact you about that or where to find you, where can they find you?
Find me on Instagram. I hate my Instagram name. I don't know why I used it. John Martini. Okay, that's the best place to find me is Instagram. Just
Yeah, so go give John a shout. Obviously, I'm sure he'll follow along like with his off season and his prep as well. And then as far as the podcast goes, like please do try and get behind it because like the more I want to try and get this going weekly again, especially coming up to the shows and the prep, there's more people to talk to. So please like, share, follow all that fucking social media kind of stuff as well. And obviously you can follow me at Neil Rennie Coaching as well. But hope you enjoyed it, guys, and thank you for listening. Appreciate it,
thank
John.
you.